And those of you who've been following the work of David Icke, this is an important perspective here, because we support his work fully, in as much as he makes a beautiful presentation and he starts off by saying, we are infinite consciousness. There are many ways to put this, but it's very hard to disagree with that. We're immortal, godlike beings who've long ago forgotten what our power was. The potential of consciousness is enormous. It's very important to realize that how powerful we are may be the single most important component in this whole picture that enables us to save the day. This may be what it's really all about. Admiral George Hoover, who died in 1998, he was in the Office of Naval Intelligence in the US Navy. He talked to researcher Bill Burns, the editor of UFO magazine, and Bill Burns described this conversation with George Hoover to George Norrie from Coast to Coast AM. And what Admiral George Hoover told Bill Burns was the biggest secret according to what the American Navy had found out. Very, very interesting story. They were talking about the Roswell visitors, and Admiral George Hoover said that these visitors were us from the future. They were time travelers. They weren't extraterrestrials. Now, other researchers and whistleblowers have spoken about the same thing, and this is fascinating in itself. But what Admiral George Hoover said the biggest secret really was, it had to do with the abilities and the power of the consciousness of these travelers. Because they were us from the future, what the military authorities had found out was what humans are really capable of. And he said that this had been buttoned up really tight, because if we knew how powerful we really were, how powerful we really could be, then we would, in his own words, cause chaos around us, and this could never be permitted. We could rearrange the reality around us in the way that we wanted to, in the way that, if this is real, that the future humans have learnt how to do, which gives them access to these sorts of incredible abilities, such as time traveling. Philip Corso, in his book The Day After Roswell, described in some detail how his understanding was that the way the craft works was they were like an amplification of the pilot's own consciousness. It was their consciousness, it was their ability to travel and bilocate that was amplified by the craft, and that actually all of these abilities are basically abilities connected with the consciousness of the beings themselves. And if they are us, this is the message for all of us here. We're being deliberately dumbed down. Our food is being poisoned. Our children are being lied to in the schools. We're being fed propaganda in the media. We're being forced into this tiny little box. We're being kept busy with game shows and ball games, and we are discouraged from really finding out what it is that is our heritage on this planet. Eric von Däniken has just published a book which is called History is Wrong. There's so much which we are denied. George Green describes that we are known as the useless eaters, this surplus population of billions of people, with a tiny number of people at the top of the heap who are dependent upon us to police each other and to laugh at each other and to stop each other from getting out of line, because we're encouraged to conform to how we're meant to be. And so there's this straitjacket that there is the opportunity for us to break out of, and it's this straitjacket which has been deliberately put in place by these very people who've been creating this plan. Where this plan originates from, it's very interesting to speculate. Our source told us that this has been in place for a long time. He'd first heard about the Anglo-Saxon mission as long ago as 1976. The Illuminati symbolism about the dawn of a new day has been going on for a long time. many people think that this plan requires such a superhuman level of intelligence and strategic understanding, and is so ruthless and so cold that the logic suggests, and David Icke says this, Jordan Maxwell says this, we say this ourselves with full agreement, that this didn't come from a human source. People aren't capable of doing this against other people. There's something else behind this. We have to think big. We have to think from the highest spiritual viewpoint that we possibly can do. That these people shouldn't be fought. What must happen is we just withdraw our consent from these things that are being done to us, from this plan that we're part of, and as I was saying just before, if you're in the military or if you're in intelligence services, withdraw your consent from this, because these plans can't happen without it. There's something about the Illuminati and the way that they're operating that is very limited. They're using force, they're in a box, they're trying to counter what everybody I know is recognizing and referring to as a huge expansion of consciousness all over the world, an expansion of awareness. We get emails every day from people, often very young people, who are saying, I can really see what's happening in the world. Tell me what to do about this, but I'm ready. I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to do whatever it was that I came here for. I don't know what that is yet, but I know that we've got big problems. 20 years ago, people weren't saying that kind of thing. There's a huge rollout of some kind of an expansion of consciousness. It's a morphic field that's growing enormously. And there's something that's changing. And my personal belief is that this is certainly being supported by benevolent non-human agencies, let me put it this way, who know about this kind of plan. They don't know whether it's going to happen or not, but they know that it's being planned. A lot of contactees, there's some channel information. You need to consider channel information extremely carefully. But there is channel information, and there are contactee reports that all talk about scenarios like this and how we must be wary, how we must be careful, how we've got to guard against it, how we've got to insure against it, how we've got to be prepared for something like this. And it's entirely possible that this increase in consciousness is happening in direct response with this escalation of violent, forceful plans. It's like, as I've often said in my own presentations in the past, it's a little bit like a movie script itself, where you've got everything building up to a climax, so the forces of evil and the forces of consciousness just kind of getting ready for some kind of final confrontation. Now, I'm not trying to be biblical about this, and I know that this situation which I've just been describing is a little bit like the Armageddon War, but I do not believe that this kind of thing will actually come about. As I've said many times before, there's an interview which I did on Freedom Central, which you'll see on the Camelot site, where I say the single strongest reason that I have for not believing that anything is fixed, that we're all doomed, that anything really bad is going to happen, although I think we've got a lot of problems to solve, is because I wouldn't be here, and neither would you watching this now. I'd have incarnated on another planet. I'd have gone somewhere else. I'm not going to go and sit here in the firing line with no possible way of escaping. There's a job to do here, and many of you watching this will be aware of the fact that we're here to do jobs. It's what Dolores Cannon calls volunteers. We may be here for a reason. We may be here to help catalyze this increase in consciousness, and that's what's going to prevent this kind of thing from happening, because if we do not agree that this is the future that we want, then that's not what we're going to experience. We do all co-create our reality, we do all have a part in it, and I profoundly believe that by becoming aware of these plans. This is the way that we avert them. There's a difference between prediction and prophecy. These are two words in the English language that are easily confused with each other. Prediction and forecasting is saying, okay, in 3 months' time, this is what's going to happen because this is what the data leads us to conclude logically. That's all about forecasting and prediction. A prophet does something different, and it's a word to be used with care because it's often misused, it's often misunderstood, and it's like a biblical term, and some people react against it for that reason. But what a prophet always used to do was to say, listen, if we don't wake up and if we don't take action, then this is what's going to happen. And the purpose of the prophet giving this prophetic warning is not to warn people that it will happen, but to say, listen, you got to change something here. You got to change the way you're doing things. You got to change the way that you're being. You got to change the way you're interacting with each other. You got to change your whole attitude. Whatever it is that you change, then the purpose of the change is so that this prophesied event doesn't happen. And so what we have here is we have a kind of prophecy. It's not a prediction. And I'm using this word very, very carefully because the reason why I'm making this statement, the reason why we're releasing this information is to make sure that this doesn't happen. What are we going to do with this information? It's going to be translated into every language that we can. The video is going to be subtitled in Chinese, Arabic, Russian, Spanish, every other major language. I want this video to be picked up by the Chinese. I want this to be escalated up the line. The Chinese are very sensitive about videos that refer to them, especially ones with Chinese subtitles. This will be reported right up the line to Chinese intelligence, to the Chinese military commanders. And the reason for that is because, first of all, if this is nonsense, it doesn't matter, okay? But if this is a really serious threat, then those are the guys who need to know about it, because their first nuclear response, which is designed to be provoked, is the thing that actually sets this whole thing on fire. And so, to any Chinese military commanders who are listening to this, don't do it, okay? None of us must do anything here that is in alignment with their plans. There's a wonderful scene in the Avatar movie that I loved so much, which was when the woman helicopter pilot who was ordered to fire her weapons at the big tree. She's just about to fire, and then she says, I didn't sign up for this. And then she turns around and she goes home. She's not going to be part of this. There are many people in the military who never signed up for anything like this. There are many people in the intelligence services. They never signed up for anything like this. They signed up when they were young, thinking that they were doing the best thing for their country, thinking that they're doing the best thing for mankind. They're not all evil at all. And so as a direct message to those of you in the military and the intelligence services who may be watching this or may have had this brought to their attention, you don't have to do this stuff just because you're told. You need to support what's best for the human race. You don't need to follow orders if it's going to lead to a huge destruction here, which is in no one's interests apart from the controllers who have an agenda of their own, and that agenda doesn't feature you and me, that's for sure. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I want you to consider this information. I'm not urging you to believe it. I want you to research it. I want you to check it out. I want you to read the transcript carefully. And I want you to see whether this correlates with anything else that you know and understand that's come to your attention. We're all working together here. We're not trying to force you to believe anything at all. We need to be careful about this information. But at the same time, if there's any chance that this is true, if there's any chance that this is for real, then we have to know about it, okay? And if you are not sure what it is that you should be doing, then I say the same thing that I always say, which is do whatever it is that you came here to do. Because most of you watching this video are here for a reason. I do understand that you may not know what the reason is yet, but you're probably here for a reason. You're probably watching this video for a reason. Do whatever it is that you came here to do. This is Bill Ryan, Project Avalon, Project Camelot. It's the 16th of February, 2010. Thank you.
What we don't know about the situation at Roswell is whether these were extraterrestrial, whether they came from a hollow earth, whether they came from another dimension. We don't know this, right?
We don't. The only clue that I had was from this naval officer. He was from the Office of Naval Intelligence, ONI, called George Hoover. We've talked about him before, who said that he was the Corso of the Navy and that the military believed, and he said he knew, that these entities were not so much interplanetary, but they were literally time travelers. And the big secret is that they were us from the future, and that we and they had the same powers, and that was the real fear of the government, that we had the ability to manipulate reality around us. We've always had that ability. We just didn't know how to use it. And if we ever learned how to use it, and we're not ready for it, we would cause chaos. And that was the big secret that the Navy eventually found out.